Greenwood. Please welcome Tony Arquilla.
Thank you. Good night. Excuse me, I've had a cough. But, hello, my name is Tony Arquilla. If you've never seen me before, it's me. Now, the reason I moved to unincorporated Greenwood, Indiana is because when I came to Indiana is Indianapolis, Indianapolis, Indiana. And to live to tell people where do you live, and you tell them you live in Indianapolis, in Indiana, I just moved to Greenwood. You know, Greenwood, Indiana, well, I'm in unincorporated Greenwood, Indiana, because it's past the part of Greenwood that's incorporated. And people that live in incorporated Indiana, incorporated Greenwood, they don't have to walk around and say, well, I live in incorporated Greenwood, because they're in it. But when you're not in incorporated Greenwood, you have to let people know that I'm in the unincorporated part. I don't even know if I'm hoping to get incorporated. And already I have all the benefits of the incorporated Greenwood. I have property tax, road tax, water bills, same as anybody in incorporated Greenwood. So I'm kind of happy about being there. You know, Greenwood's a great place to live because it's the gateway to white land. And from there, it's just a skip, and a, you know how you say that, over to Barbersville. And from there, I'm just going straight to Trafalgar. That's how they say it in Great Britain, I think, you know. But some of you might not know me from Adam, but you should, because he's over 900 years old. You know, he wears animal skins and eats fresh fruits and vegetables. And me, I wear clothes from Walmart and eat rally burgers. I'm originally from the Chicago area, and back in Chicago, I'm going to move back so that you have a better idea. I'll be closer to Chicago that way. You know, Chicago is, it's tough. People said, was it dangerous? Yes. I mean, it's dangerous. Where I grew up, Wheaton, Illinois is near Chicago, where I grew up. Wheaton, Illinois is known for Billy Graham. Billy Graham, worldwide evangelist. And then you have Oak Park, which is known, Oak Park, Illinois, for Ernest Hemingway. And then you have where the town I grew up, Cicero, Illinois, known for it in the 30s being a hideout of Al Capone. So it was a tough place. It was tough. It was, you either watched the news or you saw one of your family members in it. You know, and I remember one of my first girlfriends, Barbara, we just called her Barb for short. Her last name was Wire. It was dangerous. I mean, even the rats were tough. They chew holes in 55-gallon metal drums. Not because they wanted to get to the garbage. They just wanted to show you they could. And when a pit bull backs away from a rat, and then you listen on the radio to the traffic report on your way to work to know the best way to work, and when they said there was a holdup in traffic, it wasn't cars lying behind each other. I remember the bank got so there just were so many robberies, they just got tired of it. They figured, well, at least we could make this more efficient. And they had a drive-up window for thieves. And back in 5th grade, when they took attendance in school, it wasn't even attendance, it was parole call. And when we played board games, even board games were dangerous. I remember playing checkers and really getting jumped. And there were political scandals, but we didn't call them political scandals, because political scandal sounds like, oh yeah, who wants to live there with all those crooked political, we call them controversies. The political controversies. And it's a controversy when there's $12 million for road improvements. And instead the town mayor's in Las Vegas gambling. So she found her way on a road to Las Vegas. And later on, and the reporters would always try to catch the politicians on their way out of City Hall, and they'd grab their microphones, and the mayor would have his hat on and his scarf on and his overcoat. It was 90 degrees. There's 7 microphones pointing in his face, and they ask him, what about this $12 million? And where's this $12 million? And he goes down the steps, doesn't say anything. And then on the news, they show the whole photo of him going down the steps and not saying anything. And then they say they called his office, and nobody answered, and no one called back. And then at the end of the news, they say, we just heard from his spokesman, no comment. Romeoville is a city around the Chicago area. Chicago's tough, but when you tell somebody you're from Romeoville, it just didn't pull it off. There was a boy in high school from Romeoville. He was big, he was strong, but he just didn't impress us. Romeoville, we'd walk by and see him and say, how art thou? Now, Joliet, Illinois, that's a different place. That's where the state prison is, Joliet, Illinois. When that fellow walked down the hallway, we went on another floor. Joliet. And, people thought, well, you live in Chicago, you must have gotten in a lot of fights. But, I would stop that real quick. Somebody started with me, I'd tell them, look, all my fights have finished in one punch. As soon as I got hit, I went to the ground, I bled, and I was unconscious. They've all ended in one fight. Wow, punch. You want to be next? And if you ever lost your dog, the first place to go, you wouldn't put an ad on a phone pole or anything like that. Just go straight to the pawn shop. People think big cities, they're dirty, they're nasty, there's broken glass, newspapers flying all around. Once you get out of your house, it's pretty clean. I remember going downtown one time around Christmas season when all the trees and decorations are in the windows. And you'd see people do window shopping. And then they drop their brick and grab something out of the window and go on their way. And we had close neighbors. We were real close. I mean, you didn't even have to say drop in, you feel at home. You'd come home and you'd find things missing that they needed, and they welcomed themselves. Some of the other places I lived in, Las Vegas, I lived in Las Vegas, people say, well, what was living in Las Vegas like? It's 117 degrees during the summer, but they say, well, it's different because it's dry heat. So it means you don't sweat as much, but you stink more. I got so tired of doing laundry all the time, instead of doing laundry, I just cut the armpits out of my shirts. You're welcome. Have you ever smiled and your lip gets stuck to a dry part of your tooth? It's like when I was in a job interview and they said, what do you picture yourself doing in 5 years? I didn't get that job. When I lived in Las Vegas, people say, well, did you meet any famous people in Las Vegas? And actually, where I lived, it didn't give me a lot of opportunity to meet famous people. I lived in a trailer park. And the trailer I lived in was divided in half. So it was, I mean, you could move all your stuff in by pushing it in a grocery cart. It was tiny. And I saw roaches. I wasn't used to living with roaches, so I bought a can of Raid, and I sprayed the whole place, and then I took a nap. And I didn't realize that the roaches were doing pretty well, but I almost died. What I did see when I lived in the trailer park, there was way far in the back, they had a lot of open land, and a fellow was driving a station wagon through, and it looked like he had a strange dog, a long tail with long back legs. And I followed back there to see what was in the station wagon, and I went up close to the station wagon and looked, and I got punched in the nose. That's when I met the most famous person I ever met in Las Vegas, Boomer. Boomer was from Circus Circus. He was the boxing kangaroo. And it's a weird place, Las Vegas. You go into the emergency room because you got punched in the nose by a boxing kangaroo. And they say, oh yeah, my cousin does his nails, and my uncle does the grooming on his hair. And my nephew got punched by him last week. Have a seat. I'm going to try for a rematch at Caesar's Palace, though. I think I know how to get him next time. So, here's a quick impression for football fans, and those people still like Peyton Manning because he was a Colts for a long, long time. Omaha. Please don't try that at home because I'm a trained professional. You know, growing up in Chicago, I watched a lot of sports, and there's things like you see fans do the wave. Well, sometimes there were so few people at the Cubs game by the time it went past the first inning. I mean, the other team would build up a lead, and the Cubs would just follow them. So you'd have 3 people in that section doing the wave, and then you'd have to run down to the other end. And then run here. And then your hot dog was cold. And so with the Cubs, you know, they'd be winning a game 1-0. This is why I'm not a Cubs fan anymore. I'm not against them, because they don't need anybody against them. The 9 players on the other team are enough. But it would be 1-0, and the Cubs would be winning the game, and they have 8 innings of their best pitcher, and then their reliever would come in. And the thing about these relievers, they didn't practice in a special area. They were right alongside the field. And a lot of times the game would have to stop because they'd throw a ball and miss the catcher. And the ball would roll onto the playing field, and they'd have to stop the game. 40,000 people just got to stop till they pick up this ball and get it back to the pitcher. So here's the man that's coming in next to pitch, cannot throw to the catcher. So the game's 1-0, and the man comes in, and they specialize in their first pitch being a pitch that goes right to the bat, to where it goes over the left field wall. And you think, well, can't you train this guy? If he can't throw to the catcher while he's on the sideline, can't he miss the catcher when he's in the game? Just throw the other team off a little bit. I remember the first inside the park home run I saw is when the Cubs had Sammy Sosa, and the ball went out to Sammy Sosa, but Sammy Sosa did not go to where the ball was. But the center fielder went to where the ball was, and I thought, how could he not know? You know, he only gets 5 or 6 balls into him a game. He should be able to concentrate when a ball comes. But somehow he didn't, and I thought, I'll read about it in the paper, see what he had to say. Well, the next day, my paper, I couldn't find my paper. The neighbor at the end of the street came and got my paper to give it to me because I couldn't find my paper. And when I got my paper, it was a day late. I don't know whatever happened. Thanks for finishing that about the same time I did. But as I watch baseball, sometimes you hear things, you say, these are trained announcers, 30 years they played baseball, then they're announcers 20 years, and it's raining hard, and the announcer said, you know, in this hard rain, it's hard for these pitchers not to slip. I thought, that's far beyond baseball analysis. That's a soil erosion expert. And then the co-host says, now observe what he pulls out of his back pocket. That's not a popsicle stick. It looked like an oar for a boat. They just use that to get the mud off their spikes so they don't slip. And I think coaches, too, they have these signals, you know, for, they want a right-handed pitcher, they do this, and a left-handed pitcher that, and then the announcer would say, he's asking for the righty. That was good because, you know, there's people watching and they turn their head away from the screen and they might not see what arm he grabbed. And you want to know, and when he comes in, if he throws this way, if you're not sure, then you know it's the righty. So here it is, this fellow goes through Pony League and Little League and all these leagues, minor league, gets to major leagues, and what's he known as? He's getting $200,000 a year, the righty. That's it. So as far as a comedian, I'm a middle league. I'm not a righty or a lefty. You might ask how I became a humorist, because I used to be a comedian. And they'd have strange things about the Cubs too. They said, oh, it's a lot of fun if you sit in the bleachers. But I must have heard them wrong, because I tried to get a ticket for the fabric softeners. Tomorrow, that might not make sense either. And watching baseball, you always have, well, not all, every now and then somebody who's not thinking quite straight, but they want attention, they'll run out on the field during the game. And you'll see that in baseball. And sometimes in football, even though they've got pads and helmets and spikes, a fan will run on the field. Well, what I've never seen happen is a fan run on the field during a stock car race. You know, football's kind of interesting to me too, is, you know, they talk about when the defense of the Colts takes down the other team's quarterback, they say they sack them. And now because of environmental protection and regulations, they can only use paper. And they've got strange names for the positions on these football teams. Like there's one fella, and when they're doing a punt, and he's got to make the ball go 15 yards behind him, they call him a long snapper. I thought that was something at Red Lobster. But you know what's dangerous is because he takes his work home with him, and when they unload the minivan and his wife's trying to get the groceries, the loaf of bread goes 15 yards, and then the milk goes 15 yards. She calls a timeout before the eggs come out. And then there's another fellow they've got, they call him the big nose tackle. Now, I think that's insensitive to something he can't control that's in the middle of his face. Well, excuse me. And there's, you know, here's 80,000 people at a football stadium like Lucas Stadium in a major city like in a near unincorporated Greenwood, Indiana. And there's 80,000 people out there, and here's this quarterback who's trained, and you hear him say these words that describe a primitive housing area. Hut, hut, hut. I mean, we're in a major city. He could say condominium, townhouse, subdivision. Thank you. You're a friendly group. This isn't like the one time after my show somebody said, I want to beat you senseless. I said, well, how about if you just hit me till I can't smell anymore? You know, and as I'm watching the game, the ball carrier drops the ball, and the announcer, this is maybe the one who does baseball and talks about the layers of erosion, and he says, the ball carrier drops the ball. He doesn't say he drops the ball, he says, he's ball security challenged. The man dropped the ball. It's laying on the ground. The other team picked it up and scored. He fumbled. It upset me. And then where they line up, there's this team here, and they line up against that team there, and they say this is the line of scrimmage. Kind of like right in between where these two sections of seats are, there's the line of scrimmage. But what happens in the line of scrimmage, there's people getting rearranged ears, noses, teeth knocked out, hair disheveled. It's a war zone. And they call it the line of scrimmage. And when one person gets too close to the other person in the line of scrimmage, then they use this other word. It's not like, stop, you're getting too close. Encroachment. That's a good word to use, isn't it? Next time you're on an airplane, somebody's a little too, you know, their hips touching your shoulder, you're encroaching me. Just pull out a flag and toss it down. You're going to get stale pretzels if you don't straighten out. Or if you're in the grocery store, somebody bumps your cart or bumps you from behind that's encroaching. Call the manager, have him go in the lane that just closed. There's a time you may have to do these things, and if I could prepare you in advance, I've done my service. You know, golf is kind of interesting to me also. You know, I've only played a few times, and I'm kind of slow on the golf course because, like, if par is 4, I might make it in 12. And people that want to keep on going that are behind you that don't wait and they hit their ball, they'll yell, 4. You know, nautical terms are wonderful. I mean, knowing fore and aft and how many miles translate into knots. But when a ball, dimpled, round ball is about to implant my head, that's not a time for me to be discerning nautical terms. Am I fore? Am I aft? I just need to know 3 things. 911 ambulance, get me quick. Now hockey's interesting. I watched some hockey on TV, and there's even women's hockey teams. And the reason I knew, I wasn't really watching too close, they have pink sticks. Pink sticks. Thanks. I won't say it again. You know what? They use, like football, there's a ball that you kick with your foot. In baseball, a ball you hit, you run to a base. In hockey, I don't know where they get the name for this round rubber disc. Puck. Puck. I mean, do they drill holes in the ice and bring up a net full of pucks? You know, where do they get these? It looks like it's artificial vertebrae for a giraffe. And then they have this championship where they award somebody, it's called a Stanley Cup. And I don't know who Stanley is, but what's he drinking out of? In Chicago, how I said, you know, it was tough. The goalie, one time in Chicago, he didn't block the puck with his stick, and he didn't use his pads. He'd catch it with his teeth. It's a tough goalie. Well, you know, maybe on the way here, as you were driving, you saw on the light pole that sign that said mattress and box spring pillow top. It looked like a pretty good price, but I got wondering when they bought it, why did they decide, here it's still in the plastic, but why did I buy a mattress and box spring? Sleeping's a waste of time. Yeah, I could get my money out of that and instead get a nice lawn chair and a barbecue set. Yeah, I'll just sell that thing, but I won't use eBay or newspapers. I'll just put it on the light pole. And how many of you driving by said, you know, if I just bought a mattress, a new one like that, direct from somebody still in the plastic off the light pole, wow, I'd probably feel great tomorrow morning. That's all I need. You know, well, as long as I'm going to buy mattresses off light poles, and next time I'm not feeling well, I could look on Craigslist for liver surgery. I had to take a flight to see my sister because she's in Florida in April, and it was a good flight. And before you get on the plane, they make this announcement: we are now doing pre-flight boarding. I didn't know there was another way. Can you board the flight after it's taking off? Hey, slow that thing down. Let me grab the wing. I'll pull myself up. Hey, you, let me in the window. Pre-flight boarding. And then they've got this metal frame, and it tells you about carry-on luggage, that whatever you carry on should fit in this metal frame. There should be a sign that just says, ignore this, because everyone does. I mean, this structure could fit a washing machine, and somebody will still try to get something the size of a refrigerator on carry-on. And they wait till everybody else gets their stuff on, and then they just start pushing it, shoving it, and sit back, hide behind a magazine, sipping a seltzer with some lemon, and then there's the attendant, and he's bursting, you know, his eyeballs bulging out, sweat's coming off, he's trying to close this thing, and the fellow from behind the magazine has got the solution. Take out the blanket and pillow. That's wonderful. You caused a problem, but you know the solution like that. It's the blankets and pillows of the world causing our problems. If we could just get them tossed out of there underneath the seat or wherever, we could get these refrigerator-sized carry-ons in there. Why don't you just tow your house to the back of the plane? Oh, you're beautiful people. You know, that's a good thing about being a human being. Just by being a human being, you can be beautiful. I mean, you don't have to work at it, you don't have to practice, you don't have to, I mean, it's the older I get, the more I appreciate just seeing, like yesterday, when one of the families was out here, a girl jumped from that top step right onto that carpet. I remember being able to do things like that. You know, it's not that I'm old. I mean, 59 isn't really, it's not, it is. It's the oldest I've ever been. My next birthday, I plan to be 60. If it still works out, they keep numbers like that. You know, when you're 2 years old, everybody's happy. You have a birthday, they got the cake, and then, you know, the child is just even learning how to breathe in and out their nose and their mouth simultaneously, and they tell them, blow. Blow. And then someone says, they need help. So four heads collide together, this big gust comes out, candles fly off the cake onto the window, and the melting wax is dripping them down, and the dog chews one and gets sick. Now you got a vet bill. The kids too doesn't even know what's going on. But they get this expectation in their mind. When I'm at my birthday cake and I can't blow out all the candles, I'll get help. When you're 59, you're on your own. There's nobody blowing out candles with you. There's no cake, there's no candle. And the dog doesn't get sick, but that's all right. You know, I was thinking to celebrate to go on an Alaskan cruise, but I heard sometimes they go by these icebergs and they get too close. But I figured if everybody was organized and just went to that side of the ship and blew. Well, I'm beginning to sweat. You know, I was experiencing some depression, so I went to a psychiatrist, and he said to get an antiperspirant. It's really been helping a lot. You know, relieve that tension and nervousness. My dad used to have this stuff when I was growing up. You spray it under your arm, and it would just freeze the skin, and nothing. You couldn't sweat, you couldn't bleed, you couldn't. But behind your kneecap, it would come out like a river. You know, I've been trying to sell my house, and it's not really much of an effort on my part. There's a sign, and people show up, and I can't be there, and then I come back and find out nobody offered me any money, so I keep the sign up. I mean, until you're going to give me money, I don't care how many times you show up and walk through. I'm staying there. At least another week. I cut the grass. So, but you want to keep the house smelling nice, so when people walk in, they open the door, they say, "Oh, doesn't it smell nice?" Well, after you live there a few months, it'll smell like it does to me. They've got these air fresheners, orange mandarin. You know, it makes the house smell nice, but it also makes it smell like I'm always eating takeout Chinese food. Well, what scares me about, you know, if I ever get sick, it's because I saw this going down the street one time. I was driving down the street, and ahead of me was a student driver sign on an ambulance. That kind of concerned me, you know, because if I get sick and they take me to and the student drivers, you know, says, "Well, I'm not sure how to get to the hospital. Are you feeling okay back there? You want to stop at Jack in the Box?" You know, we had a rough winter, didn't we, this year in unincorporated Greenwood. It was a rough, pretty cold winter, and I started thinking about getting one of those Amish heaters. I mean, those Amish heaters, they show it, the families all around it, nobody's getting burnt, the dog sits on it, the cat's next to the dog, everyone's full of love and cheer. But when they show the Amish people making it in the factory, they're in these long overcoats with gloves and hats and scarves, and I think, well, why isn't it keeping them warm? And then it says it's made with Chinese technology. I don't know a lot of Amish people, but I've never seen a Chinese Amish person. And as far as the technology, it just looks like a cord going into the wall. So, what's your electric bill after all of this? You know, fast food is a good thing. It's handy when you don't have a lot of time to cook, or if you're living to, you know, you have an allergy like me to anything that doesn't come out of a can. So, fast food, though, you come up to the counter, there could be a person grilling fries, and another person making hamburgers, and another person, whatever they're doing at the drive-thru, and you could be at the counter 5 minutes and nobody says hello. So I got kind of bothered. And I got back in my car, drove to the drive-thru window. And 3 people walked up to the counter, and the drive-thru person left and served them. I decided to fast. Well, I'm just going to show you this from a different point of view here now. Is you say, well, how does a person even get started or want to do comedy? And I grew up I wasn't the only child, because I had a brother and a sister. And when you have other children in the family, you can't be the only one. So I wasn't the only child, but my sister was 12 years older than me, and my brother was 8 years older than me. So when they left the house, I was the only one left in the house. And then what I do is, because I had so much time alone, I think of things like what I'm telling you tonight, and I tell jokes to myself. So I'd say, "Hi Tony, how are you tonight?" "Yeah, I'm doing all right, thanks." You know, before I was here tonight, I was somewhere else. "Okay." I knew my jokes, so I didn't laugh too much. Yeah, I had some different jobs, Tony. I used to race cars, but who could run 120 miles an hour? Oh, race cars, yeah. Yeah, I went into a delicatessen. I said, "Make me a poor boy." "Yeah, thanks, I've got to go." Growing up alone might do things like that to you. Growing up in Chicago, you know, it was different because there's a lake there. Indianapolis doesn't have a big lake like you have in Chicago, and the weather report would always give warnings if people have sailboats and ships, and they'd say there's small craft warnings. And on days like that, my mom wouldn't do knitting or macrame. Thank you, you're very alert. I appreciate that. So I don't really... Excuse me. I hope to finish it before... I got poison oak last week, and part of the poison oak, I think, brought on a fever and a cold. And what was strange is the doctor, he gave me a steroid. I didn't know, all I know about steroids is baseball players hit the ball further, and football players kick the ball further. I've got poison oak. I don't know why I needed a steroid, but he says the steroid tells the body not to fight what it's fighting. And then you're able to get over what you have sooner. So if I'm recovering, but the medicine says don't do what you're doing, but somehow through it all, I have a cold, so I can't do anything. I apologize. Well, let's see. Oh, I don't have a way of timing this, so I don't really know where we are. I mean, if could someone tell me what time it is, please? Okay. All right. Well, we might go to our conclusion. So, you know, an apple a day, that's a good practice. Me not feeling well to keep the doctor away, so I thought I'd plant an orchard. It would just knock out the whole copay thing. You know, it's strange with medical insurance. It's a good thing to have, but you hope you don't have to use it. And when you do use it, then you're sorry you had to, because you find out there's copays, and this is covered, that's covered, and then there's these pre-existing conditions. And they say, well, were you alive before this happened to you? You know, I go grocery shopping, I see some things I don't even make sense out of, like fish sticks. What's fish sticks? Is that something do fish sweat? It's undergill deodorant? What's a fish stick? And, you know, I used to go to barbers and get my hair cut, but I don't make sense out of them. I said, what could I do to get my mustache look thicker? They said, trim your eyebrows. You know, and then there's these signs when you're driving down the road. It says, if you lived here, you'd be home by now. Isn't that pretty much any place I ever lived? When I got there, I was home. That's why I lived there. I didn't pull up to my house and say, I've got to go around the mall 5 times and through the park 3 times, and then I could be home. If I lived here, I am home. It's you that's not home that put the sign up. And then they have ponds, but it says it's only for the enjoyment of the residents. So if I drive by, I don't live there, I see a duck, I can't say that's a nice duck. It's not for your enjoyment. No swimming, no fishing, and no, just put a big sign that says no. Enjoy your day. That's great. Don't do anything here, don't come here, and don't enjoy it. But have a nice rest of the life. So, I thank you for coming tonight. I just want to finish up with a little music. I thought the Stern family, that was terrific. It was outstanding. And Toby doing a wonderful job. I thank the pastor, the elders for allowing us to do this tonight because they took a risk. They really, I mean, they know me, but you don't ever know when somebody gets in front of a microphone what's going to come out of their mouth. And that's taking a risk, especially now that you know what you've heard.
We regret it.
You may recognize that tune. That's a tune from the movie Fiddler on the Roof. And of course, I'm not able to get up on the roof right now, and I don't have a fiddle, but I'm going to play cornet on a chair. Cornet on a chair, thank you. That was on a windy day. That was to show you I didn't pay for the whole electric bill today. That was to show you I could play more than one song on a chair. Well, why I chose that song, The Fiddler on the Roof, is because in the movie The Fiddler on the Roof, he's playing a fiddle and he's on a roof, and a lot of roofs, as you know, they're slanted, and if you slide, you usually go down. The gravel and that is kind of hard to get out of your hair, and it scrapes you. The gutter's not wide enough to catch you. When you meet the ground, it hurts. You know, it's a precarious, it's a sensitive and a dangerous position being a fiddler on a roof. You know, and it kind of ties into what life generally is unpredictable, it's uncertain. I mean, we're here today laughing and some of the time, and enjoying great music, and you know, that's wonderful, but we don't know about tomorrow. Nobody knows about tomorrow. I mean, I'd like to all say we don't know. I don't know. I barely made it through some of that coffee. And that was unrehearsed. But we don't know about tomorrow, but we do know who holds tomorrow. We know Jesus. He says he's the way, the truth, and the life. And we just want to make sure if you've never made a decision to have Christ come in your life, or you're sure that you will go on to heaven with Christ, that you would make sure to ask one of us here tonight. That's really it. And we'd just like to have you visit with each other and welcome you back to church if you'd like to come 10 o'clock tomorrow morning. And again, thank you very much.